I'm Stephen Babcock. I'm the assistant editor with Technically. We're a network of local news sites that covers tech entrepreneurship, innovation, impact, social impact work. And, we're around a few cities in the mid-Atlantic. And and I'm just going to introduce co-moderator here, Jay Nwachu. Jay, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Jay Nwachu, president of Innovation Works and Ignite Capital, supports social enterprises in Baltimore City, especially in communities in distress.
Cool. So I think from my perspective, from, kind of as a journalist kind of covering things, one of the things I was real struck by in the early days, after when the world kind of changed very quickly was that, yes, there was kind of the top level kind of, government response. What are we going to do? But we also saw from the community level that the response was, people kind of asked me like, are things like slowing down for your coverage in the community because like work is stopping or something? And of course the answer was that it's actually picked up as far as keeping track of what folks are doing, because there were new partnerships being formed, there were new unmet needs that were being addressed, and frankly, organizations that are spinning up that might even be with us into the future here. So was always interested. I've personally always kind of had a interest in the sort of grassroots level community work. That's where a lot of cool stuff ends up happening. And as we often hear, innovate, the best people solve problems are the ones kind of living it and seeing it on the ground. So that are closest to it. So in any case, just wanted to intro that a little bit, and hopefully for folks watching, we're going to have some takeaways about forming collaboration in a hurry, doing essentially a rapid response, and maybe you'll learn a bit about the needs that we have here in the community still too. So, but to start it off, let's just in true kind of technically fashion here, tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about the project that you were working on. Kick it off with Shantae.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for hosting this. Jay, it's always good to see you. Thanks for co-hosting, co-moderating. And thanks to the other panelists for joining us today. I know all of you except for Jonathan, but I have seen you on Dion's most recent YouTube events. I'm looking forward to connecting with you. For all of you that are with us, my name is Shantae Jackson. I am from Baltimore, but really I am the CEO and founder of Evolve to Lead, which is a consultancy that provides organizational and leadership development in Baltimore City to city agencies, to nonprofits in the city, to philanthropic organizations, and to businesses here. Stephen, did you want me to say more than that? Did you want me to talk about the collaboration at all, or are we just doing introductions?
Maybe just tease us a little bit about the Baltimore Neighbors Network. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say that on March 16th is when it became really real, that COVID was not only going to have physical impacts, specifically to our elders here in Baltimore City, but would also have emotional and mental health impacts to them. And so the Baltimore Neighbors Network formed, all Baltimoreans, a coalition of organizations, an organizing committee at that time of about 10 folks that represented community organizations around Baltimore City, who sought to create a community of care that was really about virtual reach outs to those who are 65 years older in Baltimore City, to build relationships, to establish connections and social engagement with them during a time when they were told that they needed to socially isolate. I'll stop there.
Great. All right. And yeah, in the virtual format, I often find not to call on people too much, but it's if I direct it next. So Rebecca, how you introduce yourself.
Cool. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here with all these other great people. So my name is Rebecca Yenowin. I work with the Teachers Democracy Project, and we are an education advocacy organization. So we organize parents and teachers, and we listen to their needs and concerns and try to help them build collective, build community, build movements together, build campaigns together, and we push mostly at the district level for systemic changes that we're hearing are needed. So when schools shut down, we were not sure how to keep organizing in the way that we had been organizing. I think everybody just took a step back to figure out where do we need to be right now. And the immediate need that we heard from parents was that they had no access to technology or the internet to be able to access school. And we knew that the district was ordering lots of computers, but we also knew that there was a backup in the supply chain because everybody in the country was ordering a Chromebook, every school system in the country. And so we started to ask people to donate their used computers, and we, as quickly as we could, got them back into the hands of families. That's my snapshot.
Great. Rajin.
Thank you. And yeah, it's great to be here with all the panelists, and thank you all for joining. My name is Rajin. I am with Dent Education. We are a nonprofit in Baltimore City that works with high schoolers, and we run programs for our young people to discover their ability to create and build, and not only build products and solutions, but things that can actually create value and impact. And in doing so, when they're creating value, also as an entrepreneur, how do you capture? And ultimately, we want young people to know that the world is malleable and that they, as agents of change, can make a dent and they can actually shape what's around them. And when COVID hit, we had to change a lot. Obviously, all of our programs stopped, but we just leaned into what we did and saw problems as opportunities and asked ourselves, in this moment, what can we do as makers and problem solvers? And obviously, one of the big needs that was evident in our community was the need for PPE. And so we actually shifted to ramping up an operation to build face shields, which is it's still running and is a huge testament to the collaboration and just community of Baltimore. And so excited to talk more about that.
Great. And Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Moore, founder and CEO. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. I'm really curious to glean, to kind of grab some nuggets from everyone else, to tell you the truth. We focus on really hyper-localizing workforce and economic development to really inspire community revitalization from the ground up. And the way that we're doing that is we're concentrating on how do we get as many people connected to the internet in low-income neighborhoods and underserved communities, but also train them in understanding how do you collect data to really measure, air, water, and air pollution, water pollution, and heat index.
Great.
Awesome.
All right. I'm tossing it to Jay.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So far, you've painted a small picture for us about what your organizations do and exactly the new needs you found as a result of the pandemic. The one thing that Baltimore gets a bad rap for, or we talk about it often enough, is that a lot of things tend to operate in silos. But I know in a crisis environment, that's the one time that silos really don't work and collaboration becomes key. What I would just love to hear from you all is, when you identified that need or that new need or a more intense need as a result of the pandemic, what role did collaboration play in how you sped up your responses with the specific pilots that you launched as a result of the pandemic? I'm going to try not to go in the same order we just went. I'm going to go backwards and start with Jonathan.
Yeah, the case in point was Did You Be More? It started from a Facebook post, I think for McKeeva Conwell. We had a quick conversation and we said, well, let's just go. We knew people that had laptops that need to be refurbished. And we just went in and sped up the process, to tell you the truth. And our mission was get the laptops to the people. It was really that simple. And so whatever else was going on, our mission was really directed. And that's what it was about. It was one mission. It was real simple. And we didn't have a lot of process behind it. And we just figured it out as we went along. But the priority was the mission. And that's how we focused.
As a quick follow-up to that, so, whenever Mac says something and anybody follows, trouble usually comes after that, right? So Mac posts something, you respond. How did it play out from there? Who else got involved, and how did that all unfold from there on out?
So it was McKeever Conwell put up a post about the divide. Ed Mullen commented, I commented, Andrew Coy commented, and Adam Bahamid commented. And we said, okay, let's just jump on a call real quick. And we jumped on a call. Within a week later, we started handing out laptops. It was really, everyone stayed in their lane, and we had coordinated efforts. It was Ed Mullen had a Baltimore Robotics Center, and he knew people that had laptops, refurbished when they give away laptops to be refurbished. So did Andrew Coy, and he had connections through the school system. I had connections to the community, and Mac had other connections. And we just levered our connections, and we just went, and everyone just stayed in their lane. And it was probably a week after the conversation, we were getting out laptops.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. One thing I'm going to put a pin on is the idea of staying in your lane in collaboration, right? So things don't get too murky. Rajin, you want to pick up on that and on your end in collaboration, how it played a role?
Yeah. Collaboration was absolutely essential to building Made at Dent, which is the operation that's engaging our youth to build face shields. First, this just started as an idea, and we were literally prototyping with Ziploc bags and what's in our house. And we thought, how do we actually build a product that can reach the people who need it? And to engage our youth, it would have to be distributed, right? We can't call youth into a space in the middle of a pandemic. So we said, how can we safely get materials to them and have them build things? And what ended up happening is a lot of the partnerships we developed throughout the years of being in the city kind of stepped up and helped us get the right connections. So first off, I don't know, Jay, if you've heard of Innovation Works, but they're an organization that really helped us out in one, just, when we can make the product, who's going to buy it? And you all were actually building those networks with local hospitals, nursing homes to say, if you need PPE, we're going to work with local makers to get you them. So that was essential. We partnered with Hack Baltimore because to run this distributed operation, we're literally sending products out to over 70 students across the city, managing tens of thousands of units of inventory. And Hack Baltimore actually gave us a team that built this entire online management system to track the operation. We got a space in kind from 1100 Wacomico, which is a phenomenal space that we've been able to ramp up this operation, and now we're building a longer term partnership. But even on the funding level, there's a Baltimore's Promise launched a COVID response collaborative where we were able to get support. Impact Hub connected us with resources that we would give with our students, resources that helped us get access to BDC, who gave support and connect us to the city. So actually, one of the kind of most powerful things is a student was telling us that they were just out in public and they saw someone in public wearing their face shield and the one that they created. And this is because Baltimore City itself has purchased 12,000 face shields from our youth. And so there's just been collaboration all across, and also say volunteers really stepped up. We have been traditionally not been very good at how do we leverage volunteers? But in this moment, we had very big needs of transportation and quality control and things like that. And so far, we've had over 55 adults volunteer. So I think the whole thing ramping up and even as it's growing now has really been a testament of people coming together.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Rebecca, if you don't mind picking up on that as well.
Yeah, I think, we our work has really nothing to do with technology or the digital divide. And so we moved into the space just because we were hearing the need from parents and teachers. And then we're like, oh, there's a lot of other people in this space. And so very quickly, found ourselves a part of the Digital Equity Coalition. And then a group that started sort of around Zeke Cohen, but also really spearheaded by Somos, which is a group of really amazing activist students. And they've advocated for a number of awesome things, prior to COVID, but they've really been tackling the digital divide. And I think the thing that has been great about the collaborative space is that we just wanted to help people in a very immediate way. And we knew that this wasn't our normal business. And so we weren't going to take on fixing computers because that's not my skill set. But the systemic issues that underlie the challenge, if anything good can come out of coronavirus, I think it's that every child will have a laptop and better access to the internet. Now, whether those laptops are functional and sustained in a functioning form is another challenge. But I think that the digital divide has always been an issue, and now we know just how essential. Everybody understands just how essential it is to bridge the gap. So I think the larger sort of systemic issues that have come up through the wealth of knowledge that collaborators bring to the table, understanding both the local needs, the state push, the federal push, just how quickly sort of, the corporate push on Comcast to provide, adequate internet services for their Internet Essentials package, which is their package that serves lower income families. I think it's sent a number of people that we've worked with on all sorts of things into deep knowledge about this incredibly important issue. I'm not really sure if I answered your question, but I'm just saying it was really impressive how many skill sets people brought to the table and how we all rallied around a pretty deep issue pretty quickly.
No, I know.
Rebecca,
spot on.
And if I could jump in just for Rebecca, I remember kind of like, I rolled up outside Impact Hub and you were there kind of, collecting people who are interested and then you said folks were kind of driving around to people's houses, right, to deliver them. So, this was, talk a little bit about, that probably took a lot of kind of, coordinating everyone to do like drop-offs and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and that was, we're a small team. So, once we had a little system where when we get a device that wasn't yet functional, we would bring it to Tyler St. Clair, who has a little awesome music shop, and he's a techie as well. And he would fix stuff, and then I would go and pick it up. And really, my daughter and I did the majority of the deliveries. Watch TV in the back seat while we delivered to all over Baltimore. I'd like to say that it was like this enormous coordinating effort. Once we figured out, I mapped all the addresses, and we would just figure out our route, and we would go. And just every day we spent, an hour and a half delivering. And it was, for me, it was about connecting with people. I knew that we were providing an important resource, but it was about the connections that we make with families, the connections we make with parents. And that, this issue doesn't end with just giving someone a computer. The issues that have spun off from virtual learning are gigantic. Yeah. Great. It was a feat to deliver them, but we just, it's sort of like we didn't know what else to do at that moment. So,
Shantae?
Yeah, I'd say collaboration has been essential from the beginning for the Baltimore Neighbors Network. I am the last organizing committee member that got pulled in. So Jessica Strauss reached out to me after learning that there were about 9 Baltimoreans that were looking to figure out how we support our elders when they are given no choice but to stay at home, often by themselves, lonely, potentially depressed, dealing with grief, dealing with a whole host of issues that couldn't necessarily be foreseen because we were focusing on the physical impacts of COVID-19 and not necessarily focusing on the mental health impacts that very quickly follow physical impacts. And so one thing that Rebecca and I have in common is Desmond Cohen was also a member of the organizing committee. Something that Rajin and I have in common is that Digital Harbor Foundation and Jonathan, right? Andrew Coy has very much been a part of this work as well. We actually have youth that are with Digital Harbor Foundation and with Wide Angle Youth Media about to partner with us on a campaign to work to bring more youth into the Baltimore Neighbors Network so that we've got intergenerational touches in supporting our elders as they are still forced to stay home. In addition to that, Dr. Melissa Buckley, who teaches at the School of Social Work for Coppin State University, was a collaborator there and very instrumental in helping us get connected, not only to Coppin, but also to University of Maryland, to ensure that clinical students and nursing students who were unable to get their clinical hours in our senior centers because they were closed, right? So you have over 5,000 Baltimore City seniors who typically are engaging in senior centers for their social engagement, no longer having that as an option. The trickle down effect of that is that you now have students who want to help elders not be able to get their clinical hours to be able to do that. So they became volunteers. Everyday Baltimoreans became volunteers. One of the things that we say about Baltimore is that our people are our greatest asset and that we are our medicine for this pandemic. And so we couldn't do the work that we were doing and that we continue to do without the collaboration that we're seeing from partners like Stop Abusive Elders, partners like NAMI, partners like the Baltimore City Health Department, partners like the Baltimore Community Mediation Center, which is providing inclusive listening training to folks who were calling our elders on the phone so that they are providing therapeutic listening services in ways that don't introduce harm to those elders and in ways that not only figure out how to make a real human connection with them, but to also figure out if there are any resource needs that they have. And so I'm really happy to say that we've made over 14,000 phone calls since we started on April 1st. So the collaboration conversation started on the 16th of March. Website launched on April 1st. 14,000 phone calls made. Of those 14,000 phone calls, we've had almost 2,800 support conversations, which means that we're building relationships with folks who live in Baltimore, with folks who live in Baltimore. And I've said all along, for those of you that know me, it's about time that we get back to those times when everybody's mom was everybody's mom and everybody's dad was everybody's dad, and you couldn't get away with anything on the block because everybody was your parent and your grandmother, and that relationships are the currency that we need to be spending here in our city. And so really excited about the collaboration that's happened there. And then as a result of the 28 connections, we've been able to connect almost 600 people to food, like elders that need food, elders that need prescription assistance, elders that need housing assistance. And so 211 and MAPS, the Mental Health Association of Maryland, have been really critical collaborators and partners here on this. And then I'll just close with saying that the difference between the work that the Baltimore Neighbors Network is doing and all of the other call centers that happen at the state level and the local level is that we're calling out to elders. We're not requiring them to call in. And that state level number, if you call it, it's a robocall. If you say you want somebody to call you to check in on you, it's a robocall saying, hey, you're doing very automated, very technology driven, yes, but not the same thing as a human connection. And the reason that I got pulled into the work is because I'm a mediator, and so facilitating conversations when it got tricky. And I'm a project manager by trade. And so I'm a geek girl by trade. And so really looking to kind of bring all the pieces together to make sure that we could effectively roll it out.
Yeah, I love that. Wearing, you bringing different things to the table, but then also all the tangible outcomes that have come from that, right? Like we're beyond making calls. We're also, we're delivering the meal. We're getting the needs to folks. So how it can come out of that. Just want to remind everyone who's watching, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll surface those as keep it pretty informal here. We can surface them as we come up. And also just wanted to have a quick shout out to Impact Hub, who is also an organizing partner here, and folks from Impact Hub are out in the in the crowd today I know. So it's strange to say crowd when, you know, I'm just looking at my computer. But anyway, so one thing that did come up with kind of across that was kind of, you know, yes, the collaboration with other organizations, but I've also just been really struck by the you know, kind of how we're helping people get experience in either a new way, or when you have to do something, you know, kind of in the moment, you learn a lot, right? And in a short amount of time, and that can even be a chance to have kind of other folks to you know, to get skills that they didn't have. And, you know, Rajin, you had kind of mentioned how, you know, obviously working directly with youth, this is like an example of that, right? Where they're gaining skills and how to set up a program like this. So talk a little bit about what you kind of, any takeaways out of that for you know, setting something up quickly for really you know, effectively, like how much did you kind of leave to the youth to sort of come up with everything? Like, just talk about how this is kind of, you know, driven by them.
Absolutely. And again, it's like very unfortunate circumstances, but I think it's been a powerful experience for us, because a lot of what our thesis is getting young people to realize and to have access to the resources to reach their potential, to be change makers, to say, look, the world has a lot of problems and a lot of challenges, but you are a creator, a problem solver, and the world around you is malleable, and you can actually, you know, make that impact. And especially in March and in April, when like the entire country was just like, what do we do? We're helpless, we're hopeless, we're stuck in our homes, we don't know what we can do. It was them who stepped up and were actually keeping our frontline workers safe. Many of their parents were frontline workers that they were keeping safe, right? Our local healthcare workers. And so I think it was very powerful for them to experience that this is not theoretical. This is not like someone just saying things, but I'm experiencing my own ability, especially in this crisis that they're going to remember for a long time, that we all will, that my response was to be a maker and to be a problem solver, to the point that people are like thanking me for giving them this product that is helping them stay safe, that our own city is buying tens of thousands of them. And so I think it's the most powerful illustration of their capability. And at the same time, I'll say that it was a really hard time for everyone, but I think especially youth. I think Shantae earlier mentioned the disconnection and the isolation that came with the pandemic. That's definitely and maybe especially true for youth. And doing this gave us that platform to build a community, to stay connected. And that was so important, especially as, you know, the later events with, you know, different, you know, the police murders that happened in George Floyd, all those things impacted our students. And especially then, it was powerful to have this community. And the last thing I'll say is another one of the unfortunate impacts of the pandemic that still exists today is the economic impact, where people are losing jobs. Unemployment is a system that isn't working or giving things, and there's an acute need for money. And it's unfortunate that this was a situation that we were put in, but many of our students, as they're creating these face shields, not only are they keeping our community safe, but they're earning money. And we've engaged 72 students who have earned over $48,000 for themselves and their families during this time, which I know their family, I've spoken with some of the members, but even for them as a young person to know, I'm not only creating change externally in our community, but I'm also helping at home. And I think that's like the most powerful example of what we know they are capable of. And so, yeah, I think it was great. And especially as we got other adults in, and the youth could hear from the adults, right? From the volunteers who were driving these products to the students' homes and dropping them off, they were kind of reveling at what they were able to do. And that only helped to kind of build that confidence.
Jonathan, I know, we often, as you were setting up community Wi-Fi sites, you know, another partnership that was definitely going on, but know that there was also a lot of skill building going on there with folks from the community. And I know you talk a lot about the importance of that the people who are setting up this network are you know, the people who are going to own it eventually, right? So, but any lessons there on kind of, you know, building something and kind of having folks that are, you know, learning and the importance of gaining experience there as you're building up this thing rapidly to respond in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, the one major thing that we learned through COVID and coming together is that you have to have an expiration date and you have to have a succession plan because some things are a natural progression for one organization versus another. And as a group, you have to feel comfortable leaving opportunities on the table for the other company to grow. And having an expiration date doesn't allow everyone to go chase money and change their business model just to go get a grant or whatever funding stream. And so at a certain point, we had to say, we can't do this anymore because this is not our vertical and this is not our wheelhouse. And we're not experts in this, and nor do we want to be experts in this. But in saying that and being real comfortable and taking a step back, we said this is really an opportunity to build out a local labor pool in communities to service this thing, because once it's up, the infrastructure's up, who's going to take care of it? And so when we start to look at the economics and being true to ourselves and talk about community revitalization, it makes sense to hire people where they live, and they can work where they live now. Now we take transportation as a barrier off the table and really go deep with the individuals as far as making them local subject matter experts, because in the end, we realize that it's not about us. It's like, how do we make the people the heroes of the community? And how do we make them the go-to source? Because once you start to understand the contextual layers of community, each neighborhood is different, and there's a different language. And there's a different way of generations of, because you go into some communities and they say, oh, I grew up around here. They want to know what's your last name. You know, that's a Baltimore thing. And I'm sure it's like that in other communities. What's your last name? And they want to know how authentic, and are you from around here or you just live here? And that's a huge difference. And so to get away from that and to kind of just really drive trust, we said the face of the community and what we do need to be local residents that we can train. Because in the end, when we go home, it's the conversations that are in between that make the big difference. So these conversations, I go home Monday to Friday, well, that person from the community is there 7 days a week. Now, they can answer any and all questions that are needed from members in the community. And they can speak to them in a way where they can have a conversation where no one feels stupid. And so these in between, going to the store, walking, and we see it all the time when we're walking down the street with someone who's from the community. It's like we're walking down the street with the mayor of that community, you know. And now when they see us, it's not what the hell are y'all doing up there. It's like, oh, hey, how y'all doing? You know, when are we going to get it? When are you going to come to my house? So it just, I think that as servant, we have to look at certain things as being servant leaders and really uplifting the people that live there for them to be the heroes, but give them the resources and the training where they can have conversations where they're looked upon as being a subject matter expert. So that way, from an organization standpoint of view, we've built up a labor pool that gives us a streamlined, data-rich, conversation-rich feedback loop. So we know how to service the community and the customer base.
Hey, Stephen, if you don't mind, there's a theme here that I want to pull out a little bit because I feel like some folks have gone into it. I just want to call it out so that, you know, people can fully speak into it. There's this theme around, you know, crisis hit, needs surface. Some of those needs have been around since forever, right? It's access to internet, access to digital equipment in your home. It's isolation in young people and the elderly. It's the lack of jobs and opportunity. All these things were always there, right? And they were just exacerbated by the pandemic. But now there are questions about new needs that have been unearthed by the response itself. Now it's, okay, now you have access to the internet. Now you have access to equipment. Now, how do we do virtual learning in a way that actually helps you learn? How do we make sure you have education in how to use the internet in a way that is fruitful, right? And Jonathan, you were speaking to this idea of staying in your lane, right? This is what we were doing before this happened. How do you decide what you're going to pick up on new based on the new needs versus saying, no, we were already addressing a thing that was just exacerbated. Let somebody else take on the new need. I feel like I want to hear a little bit more about what the new things that are also coming up are And so if there's someone listening who's inspired and wants to like help say, maybe that new thing is something that I could maybe lean into. So Jonathan can go do what he was already doing and do that even better. I want to see if that comes out a little bit more. And that's anyone, not Jonathan specifically.
Okay. Yeah, I think that out of that new thing, it's what is the core of what you're doing? You know, because when we all come together, it's the most frustrating thing is when everyone tries to do 4 different things. It's like, let's just go deep on one thing. And so that way it's a collected effort where no one's really stepping over the bounds, stepping over each other's feet, tripping over each other, just not being efficient. And at a certain point when you're doing it, does this help me enrich the core of my business, or does this fit into what we're doing? Or am I going to have to change my model in order to accommodate this? And a lot of it's ego that you have to leave on the table and just kind of just walk away and be okay with that. And I think that's why it's important that when you're doing this work, the team needs to have an expiration date. And what does this look like? And at some point, someone needs to carry the weight of what the succession plan is all about. And I think that's very, very important. You have to be adults at the table.
Thank you for that.
You really do. And you have to be able to just be cool with just walking away and stepping back and say, I did my part. Now it's time for someone else to carry the torch.
Awesome. Thanks. Stephen, I'll get it back to you.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's excellent. And, you know, as far as plugging into those needs as well, or just plugging into kind of community and partners that can help you kind of drive forward a little bit. Shantae, I wanted to surface that you mentioned, you know, proud geek girl, and you were, and I know that you kind of had some collaboration with the startup community at some point in the process, and just kind of did that, you know, thinking about scale and like, you know, I mean, I think folks here were asking a little bit about how, in the chat, we're asking about how they can kind of plug in with some of your efforts, but yeah, I mean, can you talk a little bit about where there might be room for you know, technology to play a role in something that is going direct to community, but also as you think about scaling as well?
Sure thing. I actually started typing some responses, so thanks for asking the question. It was difficult to type and pay attention at the same time.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries at all. You saved my fingers a bit. I think I saw a question a few clicks back around how, if you're an entrepreneur, do you kind of lean into this space and get connected to the entrepreneurial community here in Baltimore? I would say that it is simultaneously easy and difficult because Baltimore. So easy in that there are obviously organizations and entities like Innovation Works. There are organizations like the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. There are also organizations that specifically seek to bring small business owners together to form collaborations, and difficult in that you've got to know somebody to get in. And so while they're and Jonathan kind of alluded to this before, like Baltimore is a community where those, I don't like to use the word network because network is very transactional. And I believe that in Baltimore, we don't believe in having networks. It's about relationships, right? And so you hear me keep going back to this currency piece. And so it really is, from my experience, about leaning all the way in authentically and showing up. And in that way, proving yourself worthy to be a part of even the entrepreneurial community, because my brand gets connected to your brand as soon as I make an introduction to someone, whether directly or indirectly. Folks are going to be like, Shantae introduced Jay to me. So what's that say about Shantae if I have a problem with Jay and how he interacts from a business perspective? So I would say that there are a whole host of mixers, there are a whole host of organizations that can be connected into for folks that are minority business owners. MBE is something that you should absolutely take advantage of for a whole host of reasons, from contracting with local municipalities and also getting connected to BIPOC communities. I'm trying to think what else. So on the technology front, Rebecca kind of alluded to this, as did Rajan and Jonathan, just because their pieces are more connected to the digital divide. I would say that all of the work that I'm experiencing now as a small business owner in Baltimore City absolutely has a technology twist to it, whether it is the implementation of new software or having conversations with folks about access. I did want to come back to something that Jay mentioned a little bit earlier, because it just reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so as human beings, we obviously all have those deficiency-based needs that sit in the food, shelter, housing space. We're even starting to put Wi-Fi kind of in that space because it's about access. But we don't talk a lot about the growth spaces associated with needs. And while I know I'm in an innovation forum that is leaning heavily into technology, I would offer that we've got a lot of opportunities to provide innovation in social emotional spaces for us. And that we aren't doing enough work to take advantage of that. And that's what I foresee being an ongoing, lingering problem the longer this pandemic goes on. I don't know if folks were watching CNN last night, but one of my childhood geek heroes was on with Anderson Cooper. It was it was Bill Gates talking about the coronavirus and how much longer he anticipates, given the work that his foundation is doing with others, that this is going to take us. He doesn't see our students going back to school until next fall. He doesn't see us safely being able to stop wearing masks in large groups for another year and a half. And so what I'm probably thinking most about right now as the days get shorter is that seasonal depression is a real thing for a lot of folks. And what are the innovations that we could be coming up with now to create social engagement in a very different way that kind of front lines, cuts off the mental health impacts associated with how long this is going to go. We've seen recent news that 18 to 29-year-olds have been more emotionally and psychologically impacted by this virus than anything else or any other group right now. And it's because that generation is a very social generation. And so I would offer that for entrepreneurs out there who are thinking about spaces to lean into the 18 to 29-year-old space. Be really thoughtful about what you could be doing as this pandemic lingers, that brings your best thinking and collaboration together to problem solve, not just for them, but with them, because representation is always really important as we're working our way through this.
Love that. Yeah. And Rebecca, knowing that we are at this point where we're maybe, we had the initial kind of response that, in your case, that was kind of watching how the school system responded initially, and now they've kind of started up a new year, right? I mean, have you kind of seen a lot of folks in the chat are asking about, like, what can we do now as things kind of unfortunately we're still in this kind of situation with the pandemic, right? I mean, what are you kind of thinking about, as you look at as things kind of develop here, and what the needs are that maybe folks could plug into?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I notice is that the thing that hasn't changed is that people who are most hurt by the pandemic and by other systemic racist systems need to know their power. And that's persistent. Before the pandemic, after the pandemic, during the pandemic, people need to know their power. And I think that part of what part of what our organization does that has remained the same is, okay, you don't, right now it's a computer or the internet, access to the internet. At this particular moment now that school has started, virtual learning is hard on some populations. So special needs students, ESOL kids, English as a second language kids, early learners. We have the same mandate for the amount of big group live learning time for first through fifth grade. It's like 3.5 hours of, they call it synchronous learning. And that's a lot for a 6-year-old or 7-year-old. Our first and second graders are really struggling. And those other populations, as I mentioned, and, parents need to say something about that. And I think that there's a place where we get used to accepting what's given and not fighting. And so I think that, and I'll just speak a little bit about just being an ally in the space, because I think that's embedded in some of the questions that are being asked. I'm not from Baltimore, and I came from a space of privilege. And what that bought me was a sense that I can do anything. And while, you have to be careful with that worldview, what's valuable when you become in deep partnership within a community that doesn't get that message growing up, is that you help them build power for themselves. Like you can fight for your teacher to do something different. Sure, the district has mandated something different. But at my school, I've advocated for my child, and we've been able to see changes because I've gotten together with other parents. There's steps that you take that come easy to me, and they don't come easy to everybody. They come easy to some, but it's those relationships are valuable. And I think if you're a newcomer to Baltimore, I think what's most important is to pick your community, pick your space, the issue that you care about, and stick around and build those relationships so that you can find the right seat on the bus, not be the person that's leading in the space, but be the person that's, fighting for power alongside. So that's a little bit general, but I could say more. That's fine.
No, that's good. I would love to, we're going to start landing a plane here. Talk about sustainability, right? We've kind of hinted at it, talked a little bit about it. What do you see next in the body of work that has played out over the last couple of months, either for your organization and how you're going to grow out of this, even though the pandemic is going to be going on for a little bit longer than we expect? Or what nuggets are you going to leave on the table to say, this needs to continue? I don't know who's going to do it, but it needs to continue. If you don't mind just doing that in a minute or so. Let's start with Rajin.
Absolutely. Based on the earlier conversation before, Jonathan was mentioning you got to know what you're doing and what you're not doing. Everyone's been using the word pivot a lot, and we've all had to pivot. I think one of the most important things of a pivot is when you're pivoting, one foot is anchored, and that doesn't move. You can change the other, but you got to keep that one foot. And so I think a lot of us have been asking, who are we? What is our core competency? What do we exist to do? What are we uniquely positioned to do? And for us, it's again, what we built in making face shields is going to be short term, but we're already starting to see that the bigger thing here is not face shields. It's giving an opportunity for youth to be creators and problem solvers in the community, to earn for their families at the same time, to be part of this entrepreneurial team. So how might we keep that going? By building other products, by having this platform that we've now established, grow it to something much bigger that still has that opportunity. Because I think, as you said before, these things all existed pre-pandemic. And so how can we build that post-pandemic? And just focusing on who it is what we do well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I was looking for my Innovation Works coasters that they made for me as you were saying that. I'm like, yeah, more products. Shantae, you want to go next?
I can stop laughing at you, yes. So I think that Jonathan's and Rajan's points are well made with regard to not just continuity or not just sustainability, but also continuity, right? Keeping in mind that those are two very different things. It's always been important to me as I do my work that I'm setting up the team to be successful upon my exit. because I'm always going to have an exit. And so am I creating a space that allows for either a continued straight line trajectory or an upward trajectory? It should never be a downward trend, so that the work isn't dependent upon me. In fact, my work with Baltimore Neighbors Network as the project manager ended just a few weeks ago, and that work continues without me. In ways that demonstrate the beauty that is Baltimore and the power of collaboration. My lane work is done in that space, with RACI models having been built and process maps and systems and all of those things in place. And you know, non-geek heads have no idea what a RACI is when you go in and say, we got to create a RACI model. Or where's the business process map? We need to make sure that we introduce some DMAIC here. What's going on? And folks are like, agile? You mean like flexibility? So bringing in those pieces and dropping enough knowledge that allows projects to continue without you in an upward trajectory is really important. I think that the beauty of my exit for BNN met an entry into Healing City, Baltimore, right? Which is now a citywide initiative associated with reducing trauma and the impacts of trauma across all of Baltimore City. And now working with city agencies and community members around Baltimore City to create a 3-year strategic plan around the reduction of trauma and the impacts of trauma in our city, whether those are COVID related traumas or the ones that have been here since we got redlined long before any of us were born.
Yeah. Thank you, Shanti. Rebecca?
I struggle a little bit with the idea of sustainability because I think that the work is so ongoing. The work of organizing, the work of, our real hope for the next couple of years is to have an organized parent body that can be sustained and push into the district and just have real power. And I think that's just something that's always going to require nurturing. I think that we need to just keep working on the ecosystem that keeps creating that kind of power, that kind of sense of how you can make change in your community, in your school, and across the district. So, I hope that we, as an organization, keep planting seeds and keep just stirring the pots. It's, we can't do the work, we just can plant the seeds and hope that others take the work on. And I think that, it's hard to sort of see the tipping point with that because it's a longer trajectory. It feels like a marathon, not a sprint to me. And I will say, in terms of the digital divide work, I think the push is national. I think that Baltimore has done a fantastic job of pushing on Comcast locally, but I think we need other cities to join us in the push. I think the FCC and the federal government needs to actually regulate that utility. We need to think of it as a public utility. We need a Baltimore plan to be online. There needs to be a real conversation about, okay, what does it cost for Baltimore to get online, for this not to be an equity issue that we ever talk about again. And that's something that I think lots of groups are thinking about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Jonathan?
Yeah, amen, Rebecca. So I think that what I'm seeing is anything dealing with social determinants of health, and what Shantae is thinking about, I think is dead on, because this problem isn't going away. It's gone from, I know within the digital space, it's gone from net neutrality to digital divide. Now it's called digital poverty. And we start to look at that aspect of poverty as a new level of disparity that's coming into the United States that we have to deal with, which is a reality. So I look at it as, I think that more people should think about how you design, deliver products or stuff for people at the bottom of the economic pyramid. Because when you look at who's booming, Dollar Tree is booming like nobody's business. Foreclosures are happening. People are losing jobs. So there are going to be more people at the bottom at the economic pyramid. Doesn't mean that they should not go without valuable goods, services, and being treated based on their nothing because they fell on hard times. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And I'm been reading a book. It's called Fortunes at the Bottom of the Pyramid, and how global organizations are creating offshoots of company that cater to specifically this new demographic, or this growing demographic at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think those are two areas people can really focus on, because this is going to be around for a very, very long time. And the United States is starting to really look like a developed country. So there's opportunity.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, I hope that we can, folks who are listening can definitely, hopefully you've been able to take a little bit of either the needs or the approaches to addressing things, and that you're able to come back and plug in or make use of it in your own work. So just want to quickly, maybe we could do we have 2 minutes, maybe just like a lightning round kind of thing. But as far as, to leave everyone here with a takeaway, on the idea of collaboration, on the idea of rapid response, like tell us one way that you're really thinking about, as we go forward, what does it take to make a collaboration successful with these organizations that are spinning up quickly? Rebecca.
I'll just say again, be a good partner in building power. Listen a lot.
Mm-hmm. Rajin.
I'd say listen, and I think in many ways for all stakeholders, like leading with that empathy and really understanding not just what's my goal, but what do we share in common. And that's why so much collaboration happened, because overnight we had a shared goal. How do we actually build empathy and understand what other shared goals we all have in society?
Mm. And I love building empathy too. Jonathan.
Know your role, be okay to walk away, and leave your ego at home.
There we go. Shantae, close us out.
Can't top that. They were amazing. Be ready to have difficult conversations.
Mm.
Be egoless. Demonstrate empathy, and make sure that there's equity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, great words to go out on. Thank you all so much for sharing your time and wisdom and your experiences with us. I really do think that this is a unique, as was said, the obviously we don't want to be in the situation as far as the pandemic goes, but I do think that we will look back and reflect on the interesting kind of new collaborations and even potentially ideas that stay with us going forward on organizational frameworks. So I thank you for sharing today, and I do continue to think it's really important to capture this moment in time. So thank you for playing a part in that with us.
Thank
and
you
to
all.
everyone out at Baltimore Innovation Week, we keep rolling with Trevor Brooks, I believe, will be next, and that's in a separate session, as you might have learned by now. But thanks to everyone in the audience for participating. Jay, thanks for rolling alongside.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.